I was doing Hamlet with LA Theater Works for Susan, and while we were doing it, they were talking about, we're getting ready to go on a tour to China, and I said, oh my God, you have to let me know about, when those opportunities come up, I want to do that. And it sort of turned into, I think, fortunately for me, someone fell out, and I was able to step in, and it's one of those experiences you have in life where you think, I'm so glad that I'm an actor, and have these opportunities that turn into sort of an adventure of a lifetime, really. I mean, had no idea what to expect, knew a little bit about the Pentagon Papers, certainly knew about Ben Bradley and the Washington Post, but it became, to me, really one of the great jobs. It's even hard to call it a job of my lifetime. And I think everyone who went felt that way. I mean, I can sort of only speak about it from a personal perspective, because it just became a circumstance where you are learning exponentially daily without really knowing what you're getting into. So you have the play itself, and that's sort of always where it starts, with this seed of something really, hopefully great and beautiful that you want to be a part of. And then you think sort of, what's my piece of that? How does the play work? And then you think, you show up, you're in, I've done a lot of work in New York and Chicago and here. You show up, you sort of understand what the audience is, how it's going to land, what the resonance is. Well, here's a circumstance where we just didn't have any of that. None of us in the cast had that and had no idea what to expect. And we were sort of armed with these great lists of, here's what a Chinese audience is like, and here's what people do during shows, and thought, okay, we're going to get in these huge theaters and people will be texting or going in and out or talking during the show. There's subtitles, hard to know what the timing was. And instead what we're greeted with is, and it can't really be overemphasized enough, a highly sophisticated group of highly educated, very hungry, eager audience members who were not really texting or speaking, but just sort of sitting on the edge of their seat, ping-ponging between the subtitles and the action on the show, on the stage. And it just became this, I mean, you're really stepping in blind. And I will say that Shanghai itself was a really soft landing. I think that's the best way to put it, because it's so modern, and having not been to China or Asia, I had a small idea of what to expect, but no idea of sort of how advanced, and not only how advanced, but how equipped the theater itself where we were performing was to handle this sort of show. They have an international theater festival that happens, and I think they deal with lots of artists and lots of plays. One of the best pieces of that, really, other than the audience itself and a gorgeous, very modern theater in the French Concession, which is such a stunning area, as many of you may know, is that you then get to collaborate sort of backstage as a crew of people who live and work, and this is their theater where you're a guest. And even though there are sort of language hurdles, you're really having this international artistic experience, which is very hard to come by. And it's revolving around a play about First Amendment rights, about something uniquely American, and I don't know, there's something deeply profound about that sort of, as you're experiencing it, you're aware of, and you're not even sure what it adds up to, other than a really, really fortunate experience. Also, I guess the other big piece that people have touched on was not knowing why people would be interested in the show, what resonance it would have now. And the thing that was fascinating was just that I think people responded most. Jeff was talking a little bit about it at Sun Yat-sen, to a speech that George Wilson makes about, there's a toast at the end of the celebration about having to have won and having to win for the little guy that doesn't have a voice. So at that point in the show, just a huge cheer went up in the audience, which is something, that just really rarely happens here. I mean, the closest you get is laughter, I suppose, or you hear people sort of sniffling, or that moment is so, it's something I will never forget. I mean, both that and then the ruling that the Post could publish, getting cheers, it felt like there's just so much that we take for granted, I think, in this country, and particularly as an American actor, and at this point doing a lot of television and a lot of film when you're sort of working in a vacuum, and it's the reason we all seek theater. But theater, that is having immediate meaning in that way in people's lives, it's really sort of what I signed up for, I think, from the get-go. You know, as a kid, it's what made me want to do it, and I guess the fear is maybe never getting back to that kind of experience again, because it's pretty stunning. What else could I say about the experience? It was interesting to see the differences between the venues and who was there. A very urban, cosmopolitan feel in Shanghai, and then the other venues in Guangzhou, being at a university, sort of what that was. I think, sadly, you know, the sort of controversy that swirled around having the discussions shut down, the post-show discussions, I think, for a lot of us in the show, were the thing we looked forward to most, other than the performance itself, because then you're figuring out where and how it's landing and what people are thinking about in their lives and how this play is affecting them and why we're there. So I think, you know, having those taken away from us just for a little spell felt like a real loss, because that's how we're sort of finding out about the community that we're in. And we did in Beijing. The other thing we ran into that we didn't really talk a lot about was that both at Sun Yat-sen and Peking University, the theaters were suddenly not heated. And we had a lot of problems sort of with the technical staff and getting the lights right, and suddenly there are more and more people collected backstage. You're not sort of clear who anybody is, what their job is, why they're there. Are they government monitors? What is their purpose? So that challenge was interesting, and particularly in Beijing, where it was snowing, and people are there in their sort of wool caps and scarves and huge parkas. We're on stage, seeing your own breath on stage. It's freezing, and yet, I mean, personally, I'm not really gonna stay for a show, you know, when it's 30 degrees in the theater. People just staring and so, you know, engaged, and again, very moving to see that. I mean, to see people go to those lengths to connect culturally and to sort of find some meaning. So, yeah, I guess I feel like I've repeated myself a lot in terms of how much it meant to me, but that was the main thing, sort of having an experience that I feel like could never have in this country and wouldn't have anticipated having in China. Really pretty amazing.